Do you ever feel like you want to be better prepared for emergencies, but aren't sure where to start or how to find the time with all of your other responsibilities? We hear you, and that's where preparedness in your pocket comes in. This podcast is your portable solution for accessible emergency preparedness education. Our episodes are pocket sized yet packed with important preparedness information, making them easy to digest and learn from wherever you are. Preparedness in Your Pocket is brought to you by the Maryland Emergency Preparedness Network, a dedicated communications network providing no cost emergency preparedness education, training, and resources to home and community based professionals, patients, and their caregivers. My name is Kendal Lee, and I am the EPN's Program Administrator and your host. On behalf of the EPN, we invite you to make this podcast an essential part of your preparedness toolkit. Just like keeping your keys and wallets close, think of this podcast as your preparedness partner, on the go, always ready to support you with valuable emergency preparedness tips. Join us as we empower you to be better prepared for emergencies, one podcast at a time.
Welcome to Preparedness in Your Pocket, where we break down emergency preparedness into pocket-sized steps to help you stay ready wherever life takes you. I'm your host, Kendal Lee, and I'm so glad to have you here with us today for our episode, Insure It to Endure It. When we think about emergencies, we often picture go bags, flashlights, or weather alerts, but preparedness isn't only about how we respond in the moment, it's also how we prepare ahead of time and how we recover afterward. That's where insurance comes in. Your insurance policy is more than paperwork. It's a powerful tool for financial protection and peace of mind. It helps you repair, rebuild, and recover after disaster strikes. By the end of today's episode, you will understand how insurance fits into your overall preparedness plan. Identify the types of insurance most critical in emergencies. Learn how to avoid coverage gaps and protect your assets. And lastly, gain practical tips for reviewing your policy and filing a claim. To help us understand how insurance fits into the bigger picture of preparedness, I'm thrilled to be joined by Patricia Dorn, Associate Commissioner for Consumer Education and Advocacy at the Maryland Insurance Administration. With over a decade of experience at the administration, Patricia leads efforts to educate and support Marylanders in understanding their insurance coverage, rights, and options. Prior to this role, she served as Health Insurance Administrator for the Health Coverage Assistance Team, where she helped individuals navigate enrollment, appeals, and complex coverage issues. Her work plays an important role in helping individuals and families stay informed and prepared when it comes to their financial protection. Patty, welcome on behalf of the EPN. It's a privilege to have you, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to connect in conversation today about such an important preparedness topic.
Thanks, Kendall. Thanks for having me today.
So, as we begin today's conversation, I'd love to think about insurance within the context of emergency preparedness. So, for our listeners who may be new to thinking about insurance in this way, Patty, how would you describe insurance as a preparedness tool?
Well, Kendall, at its core, insurance is a preparedness tool. Insurance isn't about expecting the worst to happen. It's about acknowledging that life is unpredictable. It's part of healthy financial planning, and it's not just a box to check. It's your key to a solid financial plan. It's your planning tool for risks that are too big to handle on your own. Having the right insurance coverage in place can be the difference between a quick recovery and one that takes you years to recover, or one that you may never fully recover from at all.
Thank you, Patty, for framing insurance as an essential planning tool that transfers risk and supports our financial recovery when the unexpected happens. And with that in mind, I'd love to talk about what the biggest mindset shift someone can make when it comes to viewing insurance as a part of their emergency plan.
Absolutely. Actually, I have a couple ideas. One big mindset shift is moving from seeing insurance as an expense you just throw money at to seeing it as protection for everything in a life you've worked so hard to build. In most cases, insurance, it's not an investment you're trying to get a return on. It's a safeguard for your home, your savings, your entire financial foundation. And another mindset shift. You can understand your policy. You can understand your insurance policy. And just a little shout out to the Maryland Insurance Administration, my employer. We publish videos, consumer publications written in plain language to help you understand insurance. Also, your insurance journey isn't over when you purchase a policy. This one's important. Reviewing your insurance coverage needs to be part of a regular financial plan. Your life changes. Your income has changed, perhaps. You've made purchases. Perhaps you finished a remodeling project. You need to discuss those things with your agent and broker to make sure that you have enough insurance. An annual, a yearly review can make the difference between being fully protected and discovering that you have coverage gaps during a time of crisis. And the last thing you want to find out during a time of crisis is that you have an insurance coverage gap. Not having enough insurance or not having the right coverage when it's too late to fix it is not a situation you want to find yourself in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for helping to expand our perspective so that we can see that insurance is an ongoing investment in our protection, and for reminding us that we're never alone on our insurance journey because the Maryland Insurance Administration is our preparedness partner. So, speaking of insurance and preparedness, insurance shows up in every phase of preparedness before, during, and especially after a crisis. Let's talk about some of the common types of insurance that help protect us. Patty, can you walk us through then a few key types of insurance that are especially important for emergency situations like homeowners, renters, or flood insurance?
Homeowners, renters, flood insurance, three great examples, and I'm going to add auto insurance to that as well. So homeowners insurance usually protects both the structure, your home itself, and your belongings from things such as fire, from theft, windstorm. Renters insurance protects your belongings. So your landlord's insurance covers the structure itself. Renters insurance covers your things. Flood insurance is important. Floods are one of the most common and costly disasters. Damage from a flood is not typically covered under a standard homeowners or renters policy. Flood is not generally covered, and a few inches of water can leave you with tens of thousands of dollars in damage easily. Another important thing to understand is that flood coverage for the structure of your home and flood coverage for personal belongings are separate products. They're separate insurance policies. So that's a little bit different than homeowners insurance, where in general, the structure of your home and your contents are covered under one policy. In flood, it's separate. The structure and your contents, they're not bundled together. Auto insurance, if your vehicle is damaged in a flooding situation, or say a tree falls on your vehicle, that is typically covered under the comprehensive coverage part of your auto insurance policy. Comprehensive coverage is optional coverage, and it protects you against things that may happen to your vehicle other than damage from a crash. So this is a great example of why reviewing your insurance policy matters. Many people assume that they're covered in a situation like that, if a tree falls on their car, etc., and then they find out they don't have comprehensive coverage. The cost to repair or replace your vehicle would come entirely out of your pocket in situations where something like that happened and you didn't have comprehensive coverage.
Thank you so much, Patty, for walking us through those different types of insurance policies. I think it really highlights how important it is to understand what's included in each policy and what is not, so that you can choose the policy that best protects you and your needs when the unexpected happens. And so, with that being said, are there any types of coverage people might not realize they need? Like, for example, when you were talking about the differences in flood insurance.
With regards to flood insurance, that is a big one. Many consumers assume I'm not in a high-risk flood zone, so I'm good to go. They bought their property, they weren't in a high-risk flood zone, and so their lender didn't make them purchase flood insurance, and they never really circle back to the idea again. Unfortunately, it's not true that floods only happen in the highest risk flood zones. 1 in 4 flood-related insurance claims actually comes from homes and businesses that are not in what is currently considered a high-risk flood zone. So that's a full 25%. A renter would not purchase flood insurance for the building that they live in, but renters can purchase flood insurance to protect their belongings. So if you are a renter and you're in a high risk flood zone, for example, and your
Mm-hmm.
landlord has flood insurance on the property itself, you would need
Mm-hmm.
to get flood insurance for your belongings to be protected. And that would be separate from a typical renter's insurance policy. Another type of coverage is in regards to home-based businesses. Many people assume that their homeowner's insurance policy is going to cover their home-based business. So their business-related equipment, for example, or business liability. It's important to know that home-based businesses generally need a business endorsement on the homeowner's insurance policy itself. So oftentimes you can get a business endorsement on the homeowner's insurance policy that you already have in
Mm-hmm.
place. But in some cases, you might want to consider, or you might have to consider a separate small business policy.
All of this is so good to know. Thank you so much. Now that we have a better understanding of these different types of insurance policies, I'd love to shift to how these policies then help with the long-term recovery after a disaster or an emergency. So, Patty, could you speak to that?
Sure, insurance does play an important role in long-term disaster recovery. It speeds up your recovery time. It reduces your chance of large out-of-pocket expenses. I think this is a good time to talk about additional living expenses, which is known as ALE. Many homeowners insurance policies will pay some or all of your additional expenses if you can't stay in your home because of damage from a covered disaster. So you can no longer stay in the home safely. You have to rent another place, you have to stay in a hotel, etc. Additional living expenses, it typically covers your hotel bills, reasonable restaurant meals if you're staying in a place that doesn't have a kitchen, and it covers other costs above and beyond your normal housing expenses. So it's important with your homeowners and your renters insurance, make sure that you have ALE, make sure it also covers these additional living expenses. If you need to use your ALE in your homeowners or your renters policy, generally you should keep all the receipts for those additional
Mm-hmm.
costs, and the insurance company will use those receipts to reimburse you. It is important to keep in mind that ALE coverage is limited. Some policies have a dollar amount for that limitation. Some have a time limitation. Say 12 months is pretty common. Again, review and understand your policy.
I love pulling up a chair in your classroom. I'm learning all kinds of things today. Really highlights how insurance plays such a crucial role in supporting long-term recovery, helping us get back up on our feet faster, reducing the risk of those out-of-pocket large expenses, and even covering those extra day-to-day expenses through the additional living expenses or that ALE that you touched on. And though it is important to remember that every policy does have its limits and specifications, as you mentioned, which is why understanding your coverage before you need to use it, I think is so critical. And that leads me to wonder, what role does insurance play in qualifying for disaster assistance or rebuilding grants?
So for starters, insurance is and insurance should be considered your primary source of recovery funding. State and federal nonprofit loans and grants, these things are never guaranteed. And in most cases, they will only fill in certain gaps. They most likely will not make a homeowner whole again in the way that insurance policies are designed to do. For most public funding, you also do need to exhaust your insurance benefits first. And again, it's important to understand that that type of public funding is never guaranteed and should definitely not be relied upon in an emergency.
Thank you so much. I think the key takeaway here is that insurance is designed to be your primary source of recovery funding, as you mentioned. While the
Right.
grants and loans can provide supplemental support, they are best thought of as secondary options. And so I'd love to dive a little deeper then into the coverage options for policies that we reviewed. So, Patty, what are some areas that people might not realize they need to include in their policies or where standard coverage may fall short?
Sure, some common coverage gaps. So I discussed the comprehensive coverage in an automobile
Mhm.
policy. Important to know whether or not you have that. Flood insurance again. It's a big one. I know I've touched on this already, but I do have some more to say. Again, a standard homeowner's insurance policy will not cover you for flood damage, and just a few inches of water can cause a whole lot of damage to your home. You aren't just at risk if you live, say, near a stream, a body of water. The risk of urban flooding from heavy rainfalls has been increasing in many communities throughout the country, including Maryland. Another issue, then this is a homeowner's insurance policy issue. You can add on something called ordinance and law coverage to your homeowner's insurance policy. If your home needs to be repaired or rebuilt, a standard homeowner's insurance policy is designed to put you back to your prior position. So to put you back to that condition that you were in right before the damage happened. Well, building codes do change, and especially if you are living in an older home, your prior condition may not meet current building codes. So your insurance is designed to put you back to that prior condition, but that prior condition might not meet your local jurisdiction's building code. That's where ordinance and law coverage comes in. If you have added this on as an endorsement to your policy, it's designed to fill that gap, helping to pay for things such as code required updates and accessibility requirements. And this can be really important with older homes. Last thing I'm going to mention, this is a big one. Do you have enough coverage to rebuild? So recently I listened to a New York Times 3-part series about the rebuilding struggles of Californians after the fires in 2025. I highly recommend this series. It was called The True Cost of Recovering from the LA Fires. In this series, California residents share their stories of finding themselves underinsured after losing their homes to fires. This isn't unique to California. This is something that happens right here in Maryland. You have issues, you have damage to your home, and you do not have enough money to actually finish repairing your home. You don't have, your coverage isn't equal to the damage or the cost to rebuild your home. So many homes are insured for less than the true cost to rebuild them. It's important to stay on top of this. You should discuss this with your agent and your broker, and there are lots of estimator tools online. This is due to rising construction costs and other things, updates and renovations not being reported to insurers. Way too many Americans find themselves underinsured, and it's not a nice situation to find yourself in when you're trying to rebuild.
Thank you. I really appreciate you continuing to expand on this part of the conversation. This is where we grab our highlighters. This is incredibly important. When you were particularly talking about flood insurance, and you had mentioned that 1 in 4, which equates to the 25%, are impacted by flooding, and when they're not in a high risk zone. And that was significant to me. That stood out. And I think when we hear 1 in 4 or 25%, and we're hearing these numbers, what we need to remember are these numbers equate to faces. They equate to families. And that is why it is so important to be able to understand your coverage, because the lack of it or a gap in it can directly impact your life. So I really appreciate you sharing. Now that we've explored the different types of insurance policies and looked at situations where insurance might come into play, let's shift then to some practical preparedness tips. When the time comes to use your policy, what advice would you give for things like documenting property, keeping vital records safe in case of a disaster?
First, always keep your insurance contact and your policy number somewhere where you can reach them in an emergency. That could just be programmed into your phone, somewhere where you know you can find it after you've left the house. Second, insurance companies are going to require that you provide them with a list of your damaged personal property before they will pay your claim. And I think that this comes as a surprise to people. And a list of your personal property is really difficult to come up with after a disaster. This list should be as comprehensive as possible. You paid for the insurance to cover your personal property. I think that you're probably going to want to get it replaced. It needs to include everything that was damaged or destroyed. And can you remember all your belongings, like in your garage, in your cabinets, in your closet? Probably not. So it's important to have an inventory of your belongings and keep it updated. preferably with images or video. And that's also an easy way to do it. You can go through your house and snap pictures or take a video every year, and then you have an updated list. The more information, the better. So with expensive items, brand names are great. If you track the price that you paid, purchase date, serial numbers, the more information you have with the big ticket items, the better, including receipts or an image of a receipt for large dollar items. The National Association of Insurance Commissioners has a free smartphone app for home inventory that's available for both iPhone and Android. That can help you with your inventory. There's also several other inventory apps out there. If you don't have time for a full inventory, again, consider just making a video, taking photographs. The more detail you include, the easier it will be for the insurance company to evaluate your loss. The easier it's going to be means the faster you're going to get paid. After you've completed your inventory, we do recommend you can store it in a safety deposit box if it's something that you've done on paper, or you can store it in the cloud or send it to your insurance professional.
Thank you again for sharing what critical documents we need to have and to keep safe ahead of emergencies. Now, when it comes time to file a claim, what should people know?
Think about your deductible. Ask yourself if, based on your deductible, does it make sense for you to file a claim? So if you have a $5,000 deductible on your homeowner's insurance policy and you have damage to a few shingles, maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe that's a couple $100 claim, and a $5,000 deductible means you're not even getting close to touching your deductible. The cost to repair is going to be lower than your deductible. So that's important to know. It's important to know what your deductible is, have a general idea of what it's going to cost for that repair. Have that in mind before you file a claim. Next, if you will be filing a claim, you need to call your agent, broker, or the insurance company as soon as possible to report damage. Keep a record of the names of everyone you spoke with. So some of us that comes naturally. We're always writing down the names of people we spoke to. Some of us it doesn't. The more information, the better, in case there's a problem. In case you're filing a complaint with the Maryland Insurance Administration because your claim is in process and you're not happy with how the claim is going. So write that information down. The more, the better. Make sure that they have your current contact information. If you always give out a landline phone because you don't want calls on your cell phone, this is probably the time to give them your cell phone number. There's a good chance you're not going to be back in the home. You're not going to be taking calls on your landline phone. So make sure that they have the best number to reach you at. Be ready to describe that damage to your insurance representative. If it's safe to do so, take some pictures that you can send electronically. It's not always safe to do so, but if it is, those pictures will be appreciated. Find out from the insurance company when you can expect an adjuster to call you. An adjuster is the insurance professional that's going to assess the damage to your property. If you've already done any mitigation on the property, so work that you did to help secure the situation and keep it from getting worse, let the insurance company know about that mitigation. Save any receipts. Make sure your address is visible from the street. So was the number on your house blown off? Post signage if you need to. The adjuster needs to be able to find your house. You want that adjuster to find your house when they come looking for you. And if you can, and if it's safe for you to do so, try to be there when the adjuster visits so you can point out all the damage that you know of to that adjuster.
Thank you so much for reviewing such valuable tips to keep in mind when filing a claim. And before we shift to exploring supportive insurance resources, is there anything else that you want Marylander homeowners to know?
In addition, I just have a few comments about resiliency. There are improvements that Marylanders can do to make their homes stronger and to make their homes more resilient against natural disasters. There's proactive measures that you can do that include things like installing a sump pump, making sure gutters and downspouts direct water away from the foundation, and making sure that those gutters are securely in place. You can make sure that dead trees or branches are removed. And we do recommend that you regularly inspect your roof or have your roof inspected and the foundation and seal any openings where water or wind could enter your home. If you are doing an upgrade or repairing your home after damage, it's a good time to start thinking about installing things like impact-resistant windows, storm shutters, thinking about roofing materials that are best suited for your climate and your potential storm hazards. Think about protecting equipment that's in your basement against water damage, elevating things like furnaces, water heaters, and electrical panels.
Thank you, Patty. You know that we love the word resiliency and resilience over here at the EPN. We've covered a lot of ground here from how insurance can serve as a preparedness tool, the different types of policies that exist, common coverage gaps, the importance of regularly reviewing policies, keeping critical documents ready in case of an emergency, what to do when filing a claim, and more, all of which serve as incredibly valuable guidance for our listeners here in their preparedness efforts. So, as we prepare to bring today's conversation to a close, I would love to shift towards actionable and available resources. Patty, can you share about how the Maryland Insurance Administration serves as a supportive resource for our Marylanders?
Absolutely, Kendall. The Maryland Insurance Administration is your state agency that regulates the business of insurance in Maryland. We license the insurance companies, we license the agents, we license the brokers. We
Mhm.
make sure that the insurance policies that you buy in Maryland follow Maryland's laws. We produce consumer-facing documents and videos to help make insurance less of a mystery to you. We're always
Mhm.
trying to educate and empower Marylanders to feel more confident about their insurance decisions. And most important for consumers, we take your complaints. Whether it's homeowners insurance, renters, auto insurance, life insurance, if you are having a problem with an insurance company, you can file a complaint with the Maryland Insurance Administration. If you have questions about any kind of insurance, we have an extensive library of consumer documents on our website, and you can invite us to your events, and we're available for webinars, presentations, or podcasts like this one.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of these supportive resources the Insurance Administration offers to our Marylanders, and many of which I have explored myself. And I'm so grateful for the continual ongoing support. So, can you share with our listeners then how they can connect with the administration?
You can find the Maryland Insurance Administration on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, we're on X, and YouTube. YouTube is where our videos live. So that's where you're going to find all kinds of short informational videos on all kinds of insurance products and insurance issues. You can visit our website at insurance.maryland.gov, and you can reach us by phone at 1-800-492-6116.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Preparedness in Your Pocket. I hope today's conversation helped you better understand insurance as a preparedness tool. As your preparedness partner, we want to remind you that the Maryland Insurance Administration is here for you, whether you need support understanding your policy, filing a claim, or making sure an insurance company is providing fair treatment. They are a valuable resource that you are warmly welcome to contact anytime for guidance and support. Patty, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a
Thank
joy
you.
to connect with you. And until next time, all stay safe, stay prepared, and take good care.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Preparedness in Your Pocket. This podcast is brought to you by the Maryland Emergency Preparedness Network, formed in partnership with the Maryland National Capital Home Care Association and the Office of Preparedness and Response within the Maryland State Health Department. This podcast is hosted and produced by me, Kendal Lee, the EPN's Program Administrator, and edited by Frankie Cirquetti of Storia Studio. Our hope is to meet your curiosity with content that boosts your confidence and strengthens your preparedness. At the EPN, we truly believe that sharing is caring, and so we invite you to subscribe, like our podcast, and share it with friends, family, colleagues, or anyone in the community so that we may all empower each other's preparedness. Please note that the information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to serve as legal or professional advice. While our discussions may include topics and products offered by the participating organizations, listeners should consult with relevant professionals or authorities for specific guidance and recommendations. The views expressed by our guests may reflect those of the hosting organization, though are not intended to replace official advice or guidelines. We can't wait to connect with you again. Until then, stay prepared and take good care.